What's up guys, Cliff here from the Sunday Drive, and today we are going to be upgrading the wheels and tires on my 2014 1500. So welcome back to the channel guys. Today is wheel and tire day. Despite all the work that I've done to my truck, I have completely kept the suspension stock as well as the wheels and tires, but today that is going to change. We are going to be installing these 17x9 fuel wheels. They have a negative 12 millimeter offset and a 4.53 back spacing. They weigh about 26 pounds. And for the tires, I spent way too much time researching this. If you've ever looked up tires for your vehicle, you know the rabbit hole that can go into and go down. And well, I went down into it and I ended up with the Falcon Wild Peak tires. These are 285 70s, obviously R17s. And according to online, they're 32.8 inches tall and 11.8 inches wide. These weigh about 51 to 54 pounds. I think it's 51. I saw a couple different things on these. And I just did some quick measurements on it. And these are 32.5 inches tall, 12 inches wide, and the tread width is about 10 inches, just a little under 10 inches. So that's what we're gonna be putting on the truck. We're gonna be showing you guys how to get these to fit. I haven't done this yet. You guys are gonna go through this with me as I'm seeing how things fit. We did get everything through Tire Rack. They mount and balance it all ahead of time. I just went down to Delaware, picked it up, close enough to do that. They included all the hardware, new lugs, centering rings. And I also got a learning tool so that we can teach the truck the new TPMS sensors. We're gonna cover that in another video, which we'll link above if you need to know how to do that. These should fit with very, very minor plastic trimming, maybe having to change the splash guards a little bit, the fender liners. Did find someone that was running almost the identical setup online. Spent a lot of time on Custom Offset's website. If you've ever looked on there, they have a lot of examples of guys running different sizes and they break it down by the lift kits and everything they have. But someone on there was running basically this exact setup on stock suspension. Also saw somebody else with a small leveling kit, and they didn't seem to have any problems for either of those. So we're gonna see if the internet lied or if this actually works. Now, one thing to note, I am gonna be fully upgrading the suspension on here. I'm gonna be going with kryptonite, knuckles, ball joints, upper control arms, as well as Bilstein shocks. I do wanna try to keep the truck at stock ride height. I'm not really looking to lift it, but with that kit I'm gonna go with, it is gonna allow me to raise the truck up to 2 inches. So if I would get this on there and we find out that there's a problem or there's some rubbing that kind of annoys me, I will have a remedy for that in the future. Don't know how soon that's gonna happen. It might be a year from now. We have a lot of other videos in the works, but today we're gonna see how these fit and hopefully we don't have to change anything with the suspension. So let's get into it. If you guys don't have a shop with air tools, or even if you do, I highly recommend this Milwaukee Impact. This thing has taken some abuse. We've been using it for about 5 years now, and I absolutely love this gun. I have it linked down in the description, and it's very versatile, has a very small head so you can fit it in a lot of tight spaces, and it works really well. Now, if you have any clips on your factory studs that hold the rotor to the factory hub, you wanna make sure to remove those. Now, Tire Rack included 2 different size centering rings for the hubs. The green one is far too large. The white one fits nicely. I'm gonna guess that this is for the 2500 trucks, and it's probably just easier for them to package it together rather than differentiating, because the green one is gonna be way too big for my truck. Now, these are pretty heavy. It's good to have a buddy, but my buddy is filming, so I'm gonna get under here and just line it up as best I can. Use your legs, not your back. And there we go. All right. Now, one thing to keep in mind if you do decide to go with smaller wheels, make sure that your brakes are gonna fit. So on my truck, I have plenty of clearance, but if you've upgraded your brakes, you may be limited in the size wheel you can go down to. And you're gonna torque these down to the factory spec. So depending on the model you have, that may vary. Now, installing this new wheel was perfect timing for me. We're actually planning to do this in a few weeks because we've been so busy, but one of my tires is going flat, so rather than fixing that, I'm putting the new wheels on now. So you're gonna see that this like tapers out and this backside is wider. You want that wider part to be towards the wheel hub and the thinner part to be towards the wheel. Now, why I do use the impact to remove lugs, when you go to put them on, it's always a good idea to hand tighten them. And even removing them, it's a good idea to break them free loose by hand first. One of my lugs, I think, rolled away somewhere, so I have to get that. But that just makes sure that you'll preserve the integrity of the lug nut. You won't round it off. You also won't over tighten it by impacting it on. But my old lug nuts are not getting reused, although I am gonna hang on to the stock wheels. So if at some point we wanna take the truck to a drag strip or something, I can put those back on to run it down the strip. And these are definitely not high speed rated, so you don't wanna do any testing with those on there. Now obviously make sure you torque down your wheels before driving off. My lug nut torque from the factory is 140 foot-pounds. Again, this varies depending on the lug nuts that came with your truck, the wheels that came with your truck. So always make sure to double check your owner's manual. And you wanna have as much weight off of the tire as possible. Ideally, you want the tire completely off the ground when you torque it to spec and have somebody sitting inside holding down the brakes. However, if you lift almost all the weight where it's just catching the bottom enough where it can't spin, especially with these new tires, they're very sticky, so they don't need a lot of weight to stick to the ground. That's also a good way to do it. So we're gonna torque these down now, and always when torquing, use minimal extensions. You don't wanna have your wrench all the way out here because that's throwing off your torque spec. So you wanna have it as close to the tire, so I could even go with a slightly shorter extension, but have it as close to the tire as possible. Don't have many feet of extensions on there. And again, don't apply any force at the head. I'm just having it here in case it would slip off. I'd catch it. You want to apply all the force at the handle because that's where the torque is calculated from. And as with any wheel, go in a crisscross pattern to make sure that the wheel seats evenly on your hub. And after torquing it down, I like to go around one more time because as you tighten the lugs, they'll pull the wheel in more. There might be a little bit more of a turn. All right, so we just did some quick measurements, and this tire is obviously sticking much further out past the fender than the old one is. The old tire is actually sitting inside the fender by about 1/4 inch. This one, to the widest part, is about 1 3/4 outside of the fender. Now that negative offset is what is allowing us to stuff this wider and taller tire underneath the wheel well here. If you go with a 0 offset, you are gonna have to deal with some more rubbing at the back, most likely, possibly the front too, although the front seemed to have a lot of clearance. Now this tire is only 32.5 inches tall, so if you go with that full 33, you're gonna be a little bit tighter at the back for sure, although I still think you would have clearance up front. And on this side, you can see how much further the wheel sits inside. This is gonna help your fuel economy, but doesn't help your looks and doesn't help you fit a bigger, beefier tire in here. So you are actually sitting inside your fender over here, like I mentioned. Good for, again, fuel economy, but I like how the other side looks a lot better. Now we have plenty of clearance in the back, as you would expect. This tire doesn't have to turn, no 4-wheel drive on this generation of the Silverado, or 4-wheel steering, I should say, on this generation of the Silverado. Plenty of room with my rear mud flap, not gonna have to worry about that. And on the back side here, we're sitting out right about 1 inch. So it's a little bit more tucked in than up front, but it is extended out past. And on the passenger side, you're sitting in about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from the fender. So still, it's poked out a little bit more than is stock. So we just turned the wheel fully to the left, and we are rubbing right at the back here. It's not a major rub. We're gonna pull off the mud flap here and see if that eliminates it. We may have to do something a little bit with the fender liner here, but it's definitely not hitting any metal or anything like that. All right, and we just turned it the other direction towards the passenger side, and we are not rubbing up front at all. So that is definitely a plus. So we just have to do a little bit of the work here at the back, and that should be it. All right, so we removed the mud flap, and we found that it was still rubbing a little bit on this plastic insert, which goes right here. So we popped that off. There's just 2 clips that hold it right here, 2 screws on the front, and then there's like a clip that goes around the back. It'll sit back there like that. Now, one thing I might mess around with a little bit more is trimming the mud flaps to work with this. I think if I cut it straight down here and just leave these 3 mount points, that'll still be plenty sturdy enough. It'll guard the side of the truck, and I won't have to deal with the tire rubbing. This part of it would definitely hit the tire at full wheel lock, so I may experiment with that a little bit more. There's definitely gonna be some options if you wanna run mud flaps, but for now I'm gonna leave it without them. All right, so we just did a few test drives around the parking lot. Definitely are not hitting this plastic anymore, but we are still at full wheel lock, hitting the fender lining a little bit. It is not bad at all, just a little bit. But if you see, if I pull this area in, there is definitely play. So you can pull that in. I think what I might do is put a couple holes through it, run a zip tie, and zip tie it tight underneath the frame just to give me a little bit, maybe another 1/4 or 1/2 inch right here, which I think is gonna give me enough clearance that I won't rub anymore. But again, this is about a 32.5 inch tire with full tread. Obviously, as the tread wears down, you're gonna have a little more clearance, but it brand new 32.5 inch, just gonna have a little bit of a rub on the fender lining, trim this piece back right here, and that's about all you have to do. All right, guys, so that's it. We fit our 33 inch or 32.5 inch wheels on the truck. Very minor modifications required to fit these, and I think they look fantastic. It can be done. And as I mentioned, we are going to be upgrading the suspension front and rear on this truck. Bilstein, shocks, kryptonite, upper control arms, knuckles, and ball joints. Haven't ordered them yet. I'm hoping to get to that this summer. It most likely is going to be next year. I think we have a lot of projects coming. AFM delete on Pete's C7, possibly a supercharger on that. We have wheels and tires to put on Pete's C7 too that he's been holding on to for a year. So a lot of C7 content is coming. And spoiler alert, we are going to be wrapping this truck over the summer. So a lot of exciting things coming. So definitely stay tuned to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you back in the next video.